Welcome. Question often comes up, how do we motivate change behavior in sales training? And to encourage an open mind for change, one of the important things we add is stories that are fun, and we're going to look at some of them right now. Now, this is important because change is hard. This is the change curve, which is a visual representation of ideas in the book on death and dying and the change process. People start out as being satisfied. When we introduce them to the need for change, there's denial. If we give them evidence, they get annoyed at us, and then there's resistance. And the real key to change, to selling, to persuasion, is taking somebody from resistance to exploration. That's what we do with prospects. If we could get them to explore, that brings them to hope and commitment and to change. That's the change curve. And the real action takes place here in going from resistance to exploration. So when we do sales training, we go over this idea. We'll ask folks, how do they manage change? We'll have a breakout. We'll have them break into groups and talk to each other. What makes salespeople heroes is they open the closed mind. Sales prospects don't want to change. But it turns out that salespeople themselves also go through this process. So the stories we tell and the fun we embed in them is part of the process to get them to exploring new ideas. Here are some examples. At our Thanksgiving family gathering one year, this was the highlight for me, my youngest grandson getting his first haircut. As you could see, he's screaming here. The haircutter's poking him in the eye with the scissors. Of course, he's pretty young. Let's look at how he does at his second haircut 6 months later. No, this guy still doesn't like haircuts. He's anti-haircuts. Now, my daughter pictured there is very wise. She figured out a way to cut out the screaming. Take him during nap, then he doesn't scream. But that's a short-term solution. Let's look long-term, right? Let's look at the long-term solution. Now he's 3 years old. It's a year and a half later, and he could do haircuts. Pictured here is my wife giving him a haircut. How does this apply to our selling? It took him 18 months to go from no haircuts to haircuts. When we need to do change, when we need to change, we can't take 18 months. We're grown-ups. We have to have the right mindset. Now, broadly speaking, there are two kinds of mindsets. There's what's called fixed mindset and learning mindset. Fixed mindset means I'm not changing. I'm good the way I am. And if I occasionally try something new and it doesn't work, that's evidence. I never should have tried it. The contrast is learning mindset. Learning mindset says, you know what? Our job in life is to be lifelong learners. And when we try something new, we can stumble and fall, and that's part of the process. These ideas come from the book called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. So again, we don't want to take 18 months to change. We're grown-ups. Now, I'll bring in stories, maybe one in each lesson, so this wouldn't necessarily follow the other sequentially. But this is about being sensitive to clues, being open-minded to clues. So my wife and I are hiking in the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge. We're seeing beautiful birds. We come to a refuge. There seems to be a mess on the floor there. I don't know what that is. Let's go closer and see what it is. Some kind of debris here, right? Looks like a real mess. So if we just look down, all we see is the mess. But let's look at what happens if we look up. If we look up, we see there are these beautiful baby swallows up there. Look down, we see a mess. Look up, we see the swallows. Are we sensitive to clues? What are the clues we look for? So this would foment a discussion on the power of looking up and noticing clues. Now, looking up is what we do in selling. We get the prospect to look up. So very often the prospect is on a false summit. He or she is looking down. They're admiring how far they've come in life. Our job is to get them to look up. That's really, in some respects, the essence of selling. The prospect's looking down. We get them to look up to our bold vision. And this is critical because it's a worthy cause, and it's worthy causes that impel us forward. Moral certainty. Again, not in the same session, but at another appropriate time, we talk about this story. Roger Bannister, he was somebody who did something very special in the history of running. He overcame what's called a self-limiting assumption. So until Bannister did it in the West, it was never recorded that someone ran a 4-minute mile. It was thought to be impossible. Our hearts, our lungs, our sinews were not designed to run a 4-minute mile. In the year after he ran the 4-minute mile, somebody beat his time. Why? Because they believed it was possible, just a fraction of a second. So one of the things we do is we use the story at appropriate time or times to explore, do we have any self-limiting assumptions that are holding us back? Let's look at as an example. This playhouse comfortably holds a 2-year-old, my granddaughter. Would her brothers fit in there also? You might think not, but guess what? The brothers fit in also. But here's a dicey question. How about the grandfather? Would the grandfather fit in there? You might think it's impossible. Well, guess what? That was a self-limiting assumption. The grandfather fits in there also. However, getting out, not so easy. When the kids are finished playing, they crawl right out. It took me 10 minutes and a crowbar to get out of there, and I was in pain. Let's look at one last story that we tell from time to time. Coaching the team to seek help. It's really important for the sales team to seek help when they need it. This is how I learned the lesson early in life. I was a graduating senior, and I won the economics department award. That was my major. This is a picture of me getting the award. As you could see here, I'm the one on the right, and the one on the left is the president of the bank giving me the award. Well, fortunately, when they gave me this award, they didn't know the story I'm about to tell you, the story about how I learned how to ask for help. So about 18 months before I won this award, I had a paper due, a very long paper due in a class, an economics class, 50 pages, believe it or not. And I wrote it out, and it was due in about a week. And I had a challenge at that point in my life. I could not type. So for me, a 50-page paper is like a 6-month project. But fortunately, I had a friend who was a great typist and agreed to type his paper. But 2 days before he was going to type it, and without asking my permission, he played softball. Line drive hit his thumb, needed stitches, couldn't type, I'm dead. What am I going to do? 6-month project, papers due the next week. So I decided to ask for help. In a social setting, I spoke out loud. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Papers due next week, 50 pages, 6-month project. And then a miracle occurred. A wonderful young woman, great personality, smart as a whip, came up to me and said, I like to type. I'm a fast typist. I'll type your paper for you. And she did. And she made it better. And I got a great grade. But fortunately, the economics department did not know this story. Because if they did, they never would have given me the award. Because one of the first things we learn in economics is there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I've been paying for that paper for decades. My wife tells me she took on the assignment because she wanted to check out my sentence structure and see if I was worthy. Actually, my wife is my best friend and my muse and my God in life, and that was a great bargain, asking for help. So that's an example of some of the stories we tell, not one after another, of course, to add some humor and fun to this situation and illustrate different points. Look forward to talking to you. Bye now.